LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the LiberalViewer MSNBC live Democratic debate clip roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've picked out the top 10 clips from last night's first one-on-one debate between Senator Bernie Sanders and former Secretary of State and Senator Hillary Clinton. Martin O'Malley's not in the debate anymore, so it's all just them one-on-one. Arguing about important issues. If you look down in the video description, I put a list of the 10 clips I'm going to be playing for you, at the top 10 clips I picked out from last night's debate. If you're watching this as a recorded show, I should actually put time indexes down there so you can skip between the clips that most interest you. I think you'll see that the first half of the debate is much more divisive. There's a lot more clashes between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And then in the second half of the debate, they do address some important issues, but it's a lot more on the issues and not so much of a clash of their different political strategies where they're starting to not so much go negative, but drawing important contrasts, I would say. And the first clip I want to show you, and all these clips are in chronological order, the way they occurred in the debate. I'm just going from the beginning of the debate to the end of the debate. And the first clip from early in the debate I want to show you has to do with universal health care, single payer, and Obamacare. This is something that Hillary Clinton's been attacking Bernie Sanders on, saying he wants to start over and dismantle Obamacare in order to start his single payer system. And I think that attack has actually kind of run its course. I think Bernie Sanders' defense is a lot better than the rhetorical attacks from Hillary Clinton. In the first clip from last night's debate, over here.
There is no disagreement between us on universal coverage for health care. The disagreement is, where do we start from and where do we end up? The Republicans want to repeal the Affordable Care Act. I want to improve it. I want to build on it, get the cost down, get prescription drug costs down. Senator Sanders wants us to start all over again. This was a major achievement of President Obama, of our country. It is helping people right now. I am not going to wait and have this plunge back into a contentious national debate that has very little chance of succeeding. Okay. Let's make the Affordable Care Act work for everybody.
Listen, Chuck, this is a good discussion here. Yes, and let me just say this, as Secretary Clinton may know, I am on the Health Education Labor Committee. That committee wrote the Affordable Care Act. The idea that I would dismantle health care in America while we're waiting to pass a Medicare for all is just not accurate. The Affordable Care Act has clearly, as Secretary Clinton made the point, done a lot of good things. But what it has not done is dealt with the fact that we have 29 million people today who have zero health insurance. We have even more who are underinsured with large deductibles and co-payments, and prescription drug prices are off the wall. So I do believe that in the future, not by dismantling what we have here, I helped write that bill, but by moving forward, rallying the American people, right, I do believe we should have health care for all.
All right, thank you both. Rachel.
So that's their argument on single payer and health care. And I think at this point, Senator Bernie Sanders' response that he's not wanting to dismantle health care, that he wants to move it to this better place. And I actually didn't show the beginning of that argument where they discussed in more detail the single payer system and how Bernie Sanders talked about that every other advanced country in the world has right to health care for all. And I think that Bernie Sanders has pretty much won that argument, but the more important argument, especially for Democratic primary voters, I think, is this issue of who represents the establishment and Wall Street and who is more the insurgent candidate against the establishment and who's the real progressive. And the next 4 clips or so are basically on that topic, starting off with whose definition of progressive is the real progressive and who has been most progressive on the issues. And this starts off with Rachel Maddow asking Senator Bernie Sanders about how several Vermont Democrats have endorsed Hillary Clinton, and does that mean that those who know him best think that he's not the best choice? And You'll see he responds by saying that, he's anti-establishment, and then Hillary Clinton tries to say she's not the establishment, and I will discuss that after you watch that clip here.
Senator Sanders is campaigning against you now, at this point in the campaign, basically by arguing that you are not progressive enough to be the Democratic nominee. He has said that if you voted for the Iraq War, if you are in favor of the death penalty, if you wobbled on things like the Keystone Pipeline or TPP, if you said single-payer health care could never happen, then you're too far to the right of the Democratic Party to be the party's standard bearer. Given those policy positions, why should liberal Democrats support you and not Senator Sanders?
Well, because I am a progressive who gets things done, and the root of that word, progressive, is progress. But I've heard Senator Sanders' comments, and it's really caused me to wonder who's left in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Under his definition, President Obama is not progressive because he took donations from Wall Street. Vice President Biden is not progressive because he supported Keystone. Senator Shaheen is not progressive because she supports the Trade Pact. Even the late, great Senator Paul Wellstone would not fit this definition because he voted for DOMA. We have differences, and honestly, I think we should be talking about what we want to do for the country. But if we're going to get into labels, I don't think it was particularly progressive to vote against the Brady Bill 5 times. I don't think it was progressive to vote to give gun makers and sellers immunity. I don't think it was progressive to vote against Ted Kennedy's immigration reform. So we can go back and forth like this, but the fact is, most people watching tonight want to know what we've done and what we will do. That's why I am laying out a specific agenda that will make progress, get more jobs with rising incomes, get us to universal health care coverage, get us to universal pre-K, paid family leave, and the other elements of what I think will build a strong economy that will ensure that Americans keep making progress. That's what I'm offering, and that's what I will do as president.
Senator Sanders, with that charge, have you established a list of what it means to be a progressive that is unrealistic?
No, not at all. Here's the reality of American economic life today. The reality is that we have one of the lowest voting turnouts of any major country on earth because so many people have given up on the political process. The reality is that there has been trillions of dollars of wealth going from the middle class in the last 30 years to the top 1/10 of 1%. The reality is that we have a corrupt campaign finance system which separates the American people's needs and desires from what Congress is doing. So to my mind, what we have got to do is wage a political revolution where millions of people who have given up on the political process stand up and fight back, demand a government that represents us and not just a handful of campaign contributors. Now, all of the ideas that I'm talking about, they are not radical ideas. Making public colleges and universities tuition free, that exists in countries all over the world, used to exist in the United States. Rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure and creating 13 million jobs by doing away with tax loopholes that large corporations now enjoy by putting their money into the Cayman Islands and other tax havens. That is not a radical idea. What we need to do is to stand up to the big money interests and the campaign contributors. When we do that, we can, in fact, transform America.
Thank you, Senator.
I just want to follow up on
So that's the beginning of the argument about who's a progressive, and you see Hillary Clinton there started to use this argument that Bernie Sanders' attack on whether she's a progressive is also an attack on, these other Democrats, Jeanne Shaheen from New Hampshire, and also President Barack Obama. And the part of the problem with that attack is she's looking at other establishment Democrats who in some ways aren't progressive, especially like President Obama when it comes to Wall Street. He did end up being a little weak on Wall Street, especially his Attorney General, Eric Holder. That's this book I have right here, The Divide by Matt Taibbi. I actually saw Matt Taibbi speak in Davis, California on Wednesday night. And he went over a lot of the stuff that's in his book, The Divide, and a lot of it is about the way the Obama administration and Eric Holder specifically let a lot of these Wall Street bankers off. So for Hillary Clinton to hide behind Barack Obama, I was reading the live comments along the way from my live viewers as I'm doing this, and here's one I saw from Big Truck. Obama isn't progressive. You can see that there. So thank you for the live viewers who are keeping me company while I play these clips and making that same point that when Hillary Clinton tries to hide behind Barack Obama to show that she's progressive on Wall Street, Barack Obama hasn't always been that progressive on every issue. He has definitely been a centrist. Bernie Sanders won't say it, but I will tell you that. And this argument about who's a progressive kind of continued on into this next clip where they're talking about who is establishment. This is Rachel Maddow starts off by asking Bernie Sanders about these Vermont. This is actually, I tried to, I think I introduced the last clip as this clip, unfortunately. It's about who's establishment and who's not establishment based on endorsements, and then Hillary Clinton trying to say that she's she can't be establishment because she's the first woman president, or trying to be the first woman president. And that's over in this clip.
Secretary Clinton is raising the issue of endorsements by your home state Democrats. She's implying that says something about the people who know you best.
Well, I don't see it quite like that. How do you see it? Will absolutely admit that Secretary Clinton has the support of far more governors, mayors, members of the House. She has the entire establishment, or almost the entire establishment, behind her. That's a fact. I don't deny it. But I am pretty proud that we have over 1 million people who have contributed to our campaign, averaging $27 a piece, that we have had meetings where 25,000, 30,000 people have come out, that our campaign is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. So, Rachel, yes, Secretary Clinton does represent the establishment. I represent, I hope, ordinary Americans, and by the way, who are not all that enamored with the establishment, but I am very proud to have people like Keith Ellison and Raul Grijalva in the House, the co-chairman of the House Progressive Caucus.
Well, look, I've got to just jump in here because, honestly, Senator Sanders is the only person who I think would characterize me, a woman running to be the first woman president, as exemplifying the establishment. And I've got to tell you that it is really quite, it's really quite amusing to me. People support me because they know my life's work, they have worked with me, and many have also worked with Senator Sanders. And at the end of the day, they endorse me because they know I can get things done. I am not going to make promises I can't keep. I am not going to talk about big ideas like single payer and then not level with people about how much it will cost. A respected health economist said that these plans would cost $1 trillion more a year. I'm not going to tell people that I will raise your incomes and not your taxes and not mean it, because I don't want to see the kind of struggle that the middle class is going through exemplified by these promises that would raise taxes and make it much more difficult for many, many Americans to get ahead and stay ahead. That is not my agenda.
Senator Sanders.
So what's interesting about the last part of that clip is Hillary Clinton was kind of engaging in what you might call an artful smear of Senator Bernie Sanders, basically attacking all of his policy proposals as things he'll never be able to get done, that cost too much. And I mean, it was a policy attack, but it was still, I guess, an artful smear of his policies. But when you, the continuation of that clip, what I'm going to show next, and this is probably the, I think the most famous clip from, I mean, if there can be a most famous clip from something that just happened last night, this seems to be the clip that everyone has concentrated on, where Hillary Clinton accuses Bernie Sanders of engaging in an artful smear against her by saying she's too close to Wall Street, and she asks for specifics as to, what vote or policy position has she changed based on money from Wall Street. And Bernie Sanders actually does not have a good answer to that. He talks about the general influence of Wall Street on politics, but he doesn't have any specifics against Hillary Clinton, although down in the video description I put a link to this post I saw on Daily Kos today that kind of answers that question. And not only is it a post from the person on Daily Kos, but at the end of that post you'll see a few links, one to a Boston Globe article, one to an article in the Atlantic magazine that talks about ways that Hillary Clinton has been soft on Wall Street. But Bernie Sanders couldn't come up with that after being accused of engaging in an artful smear, and it's actually about a little over 6 minutes, which I will talk about after you watch that here.
What being part of the establishment is in the last quarter having a SuperPAC that raised $15 million from Wall Street, that throughout one's life raised a whole lot of money from the drug companies and other special interests. To my mind, if we do not get a handle on money in politics and the degree to which big money controls the political process in this country, nobody is going to bring about the changes that is needed in this country for the middle class and working families.
Yeah, but I think it's fair to really ask what's behind that comment. Senator Sanders has said he wants to run a positive campaign. I've tried to keep my disagreements over issues, as it should be. But time and time again, by innuendo, by insinuation, there is this attack that he is putting forth, which really comes down to, anybody who ever took donations or speaking fees from any interest group has to be bought. And I just absolutely reject that, Senator. And I really don't think these kinds of attacks by insinuation are worthy of you. And enough is enough. If you've got something to say, say it directly. But you will not find that I ever changed a view or a vote because of any donation that I ever received. And I have stood up and I have represented my constituents to the best of my ability, and I'm very proud of that. So I think it's time to end the very artful smear that you and your campaign have been carrying out in recent weeks. And let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about the issues that divide us.
Okay, let's talk
we
about
both
issues.
Agree with campaign finance reform.
Let's talk about issues.
I worked hard for McCain-Feingold. I want to reverse Citizens United.
Let's talk about issues.
Let's talk about issues.
Let's talk about issues. All right, let's talk about why in the 1990s Wall Street got deregulated. Did it have anything to do with the fact that Wall Street spent billions of dollars on lobbying and campaign contributions? Well, some people might think, yeah, that had some influence. Let's ask why it is that we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs, and your medicine can be doubled tomorrow, and there's nothing that the government can do to stop it. You think it has anything to do with the huge amounts of campaign contributions and lobbying from the fossil fuel industry? Let's talk about climate change. Do you think there is a reason why not one Republican has the guts to recognize that climate change is real and that we need to transform our energy system? Do you think it has anything to do with the Koch brothers and ExxonMobil pouring huge amounts of money into the political system? That is what goes on in America. There is a reason why these people are putting huge amounts of money into our political system. And in my view, it is undermining American democracy, and it is allowing Congress to represent wealthy campaign contributors and not the working families of this country.
Well, Senator, I don't think I don't think you could find any person in political life today who has been subjected to more attacks and had more money spent against her by special interests, among whom you have named a few, than I. And I'm proud of that. You know, when I took on the drug companies and the insurance companies for universal health care coverage, they went after me with a vengeance. Today, you've got hedge fund billionaires aligned with Karl Rove running ads against me to try to get Democrats to vote for you. I know this game. I'm going to stop this game. But while we're talking about votes, you're the one who voted to deregulate swaps and derivatives in 2000, which contributed to the over-leveraging of Lehman Brothers, which was one of the culprits that brought down the economy. So I don't know. I'm not impugning your motive because you voted to deregulate swaps and derivatives. People make mistakes, and I'm certainly not saying you did it for any kind of financial advantage. What we've got to do as Democrats, is to be united to actually solve these problems. And what I believe is that I have a better track record and a better opportunity to actually get that job done. That's what this election should be about.
30 seconds, and then we're going to move on.
I think, as Secretary Clinton knows, there is nobody who fought harder. I was on the House Financial Committee at that point. I heard the arguments coming from Democrats and Republicans, Robert Rubin, Alan Greenspan, about how great an idea it would be if we did away with Glass-Steagall and if we allowed investor banks and commercial banks and big insurance companies to merge. Go to YouTube today. Look up Greenspan Sanders. Listen to what I told them then. I helped lead the effort against deregulation. Unfortunately, we lost that. The result was the worst financial disaster since the Great Depression.
Thank you both.
Senator Sanders, Secretary Clinton, obviously we've touched a nerve. We're going to be back with more on this subject and much more right after this. Stay with us.
Okay.
So that was definitely one of the highlights of the debate. That was probably the most contentious clip most contentious debate in the debate between Hillary Clinton and Senator Bernie Sanders there. And they did discuss Wall Street a little bit more, not quite as contentiously, but in another clip that I think is really important to play if like me, you're really worried about the influence of Wall Street on Congress and the president. And like I said, I think that Bernie Sanders did a fine job there of defending his own record on being opposed to excessive Wall Street power, but I don't think he really sharpened his attacks specifically on Hillary Clinton's record when she asked for specific votes and policy positions. And like I said, down in the video description, there's that post I saw on Daily Kos today that also not only goes through several policies, but also has links to that Boston Globe article and that Atlantic article. And then there's also this other, I think it's called, I can't remember the site, but it talked about how Elizabeth Warren has criticized Hillary Clinton's positions on some Wall Street issues. So check that out if you want to see how Bernie Sanders could sharpen his policy attacks on Hillary Clinton. And having seen Hillary Clinton raise that issue of specific votes and positions in this debate, I wonder if by the time we get to the next debate, if Bernie Sanders will actually have those specifics, since those specifics do exist. But that's, like I said, not the end of the Wall Street debate. After they came back from the break, they discussed who's better positioned to take on Wall Street. And I thought it was really important to play. It's about 7 minutes long. Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton both trying to argue that they are the one best positioned to take on Wall Street as the next president of the United States here.
On the issue of Wall Street.
On the issue of Wall Street.
On the issue of Wall Street, when our reporters go out and talk to people on the ground in the early states, what they tell us over and over again when they find voters who are leaning towards Senator Sanders rather than yourself is that the most frequent area of concern that they hear from those voters is the issue of Wall Street and whether or not you are too close to Wall Street. Last night, when you were asked about speaking fees and the amount of speaking fees you got from Goldman Sachs speeches, you said that's what they offered. Have have you been too dismissive of voters' concerns about this issue in your own campaign and your own career?
Well, you know, Rachel, I think I may not have done the job I should in explaining my record. You know, I did when I left the Secretary of State's office, like so many former officials, military leaders, journalists, others. I did go on the speaking circuit. I spoke to heart doctors. I spoke to the American Camping Association. I spoke to auto dealers. And yes, I spoke to firms on Wall Street. They wanted me to talk about the world, what my experience had been as Secretary of State. But what I want people to know is I went to Wall Street before the crash. I was the one saying, you're going to wreck the economy because of these shenanigans with mortgages. I called to end the carried interest loophole that hedge fund managers enjoy. I proposed changes in CEO compensation. I called for a Consumer Protection Financial Bureau before it was created. And I think the best evidence that the Wall Street people at least know where I stand and where I have always stood is because they are trying to beat me in this primary. They have collected and spent as much as $6 million on these ads. Hedge fund billionaires, Karl Rove, another billionaire, jumped in. And why are they doing that? These are guys who try to make smart investments. They know my record. They know me. They know that I say what I believe, and I will do it. And I also have a pretty good understanding about how to stop them. So I do want people to know that. And I think it's important for everybody to understand I have a record, I have stood firm, and I will be the person who prevents them from ever wrecking the economy again.
Senator Sanders, you have been a critic of Secretary Clinton taking those speaking fees and having donations from Wall Street. What about her defense of her record?
Let me just say this. Wall Street is perhaps the most powerful economic and political force in this country. You have companies like Goldman Sachs, who just recently paid a settlement fine with the federal government for $5 billion for defrauding investors. Goldman Sachs was one of those companies whose illegal activity helped destroy our economy and ruin the lives of millions of Americans. But this is what a rigged economy and a corrupt campaign finance system and a broken criminal justice system is about. These guys are so powerful that not one of the executives on Wall Street has been charged with anything after paying, in this case of Goldman Sachs, a $5 billion fine. Kid gets caught with marijuana, that kid has a police record. A Wall Street executive destroys the economy, $5 billion settlement with the government, no criminal record. That is what power is about, that is what corruption is about, and that is what has to change in the United States of America.
We're going to stick to this topic.
If I could, let me just say that, of course, it has to change. It has to change, and that's why I have put forward a plan to do just that. And it's been judged to be the toughest, most effective, and comprehensive one. I have great respect for Senator Sanders' commitment to try to restore Glass-Steagall, but I do not believe that that is enough. And in fact, I don't believe it really addresses a lot of the biggest issues we have. You know, we now have power under the Dodd-Frank legislation to break up banks, and I've said I will use that power if they pose a systemic risk. But I want to go further, because it was investment banks, it was insurance companies, it was mortgage companies, all of which contributed. So let's not just be narrowly focused on one part of the problem. We have a lot of issues with corporate power that have to be addressed. My plan takes us further, and it would do the job.
Well,
Secretary Clinton.
I would say that folks who have looked at this issue for a long time, whether it's Elizabeth Warren or many other economists, would tell you that right now, yes, we do need a 21st century Glass-Steagall legislation. And I would tell you also that when you have 3 out of the 4 largest banks in America today, bigger than they were, significantly bigger than when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail, I think If Teddy Roosevelt were alive today, a good Republican, by the way, what he would say is break them up. They are too powerful economically. They're too powerful politically. And that is what I believe and many economists believe. Time to break them up.
Look, we have a law. Look, you know, I appreciate the senator's advocacy. We have a law. It was passed. It was signed by President Obama. It lays out a process that you go through to determine whether a systemic risk is posed. And by the way, President Obama signed that, pushed it through, even though he took donations from Wall Street, because he's a responsible president. So we have a law in place. If the circumstances warrant it, I will certainly use it. And from what you say, I know you will as well. But that is not enough. And I keep going back to this because part of the reason the Wall Street guys are trying so hard to stop me, the hedge fund guys, the shadow banking guys, is because I've got their number on all of that. And my plan goes so much further to try to prevent the problems of the future. You know, we can't just fight the last war. We've got to be prepared to stop these guys if they ever try to use their economic power once again to hurt the economy and to hurt so many Americans. And my plan, Paul Krugman, Barney Frank, a lot of experts who understand what the new challenges might be, have said I am exactly on point, and the Wall Street guys actually know that.
So, Senator, in response to the fact that she has had more...
Now, there was actually another few minutes of that debate between them that I cut off because, 7 minutes, that's a long clip. But I wanted to give you that entire back and forth between them because, like I said, based on the actual record and the record you can see through that Daily Kos post that I put down in the video description that I keep mentioning, Bernie Sanders actually has a better argument to make than Hillary Clinton. But I thought Hillary Clinton did really well in terms of debating and taking what she has in her position and making it seem stronger than it actually is. That's my assessment of their back and forth. Or it's another way of saying what I was saying before, that I think Bernie Sanders needs to sharpen his attacks on Hillary Clinton's specific record in the next debate and go after the way that she really has been soft on Wall Street. And he did talk about how the Wall Street hasn't really been punished, and that again, a lot of what he talked about is in this book, The Divide, and can be laid at the feet of the former Attorney General for the Obama administration, Eric Holder. And you saw also in that last clip that Hillary Clinton was hiding behind Barack Obama. He took money from the banks, but he still passed this really strong regulation of the banks. Well, actually, it was a little bit watered down, and certainly the prosecutions under Eric Holder were very watered down. That's why no one's paid any price for what happened in the big meltdown in 2008, 2009, even though President Obama's been president for virtually the entire time that that accountability should have been exacted from people on Wall Street and never was. So Hillary Clinton shouldn't really be hiding behind President Obama on that. That's the first half of the debate. Well, actually, that last clip sort of bled into the second half, but these next several clips are more issue-oriented, not as much in terms of fireworks, but important issues, especially the next two are on foreign policy. This actually shows Hillary Clinton going kind of negative on Bernie Sanders, saying that he's naive, basically, when it comes to his foreign policy prescriptions, where he doesn't understand that Saudi Arabia is a big enemy of Iran, and his foreign policy prescriptions are not something that are really going to happen, and or could really happen. And you'll see Bernie Sanders comes back with his perennial attack on Hillary Clinton's vote on the war in Iraq, and I'll talk about all of that a little more after you watch that clip here.
A group of national security experts, military intelligence experts, issued a very concerning statement about Senator Sanders' views on foreign policy and national security, pointing out some of the comments he has made on these issues, such as inviting Iranian troops into Syria to try to resolve the conflict there, putting them right on the doorstep of Israel, asking Saudi Arabia and Iran to work together when they can't stand each other and are engaged in a proxy battle right at this moment. So I do think questions have been raised and questions have to be answered, because when New Hampshire voters go on Tuesday to cast your vote, you are voting both for a president and a commander-in-chief. And there is no way to predict what comes in the door of that White House from day to day that can pose a threat to the United States or one of our friends and allies. And I think this is a big part of the job interview that we are all conducting with the voters here.
Senator, 30 seconds.
Two responses. I fully concede that Secretary Clinton, who was Secretary of State for 4 years, has more experience. That is not arguable in foreign affairs. But experience is not the only point. Judgment is. And once again, back in 2002, when we both looked at the same evidence about the wisdom of the war in Iraq, one of us voted the right way and one of us didn't. In terms of Iran and in terms of Saudi Arabia, of course they hate each other. That's no great secret. But John Kerry, who was, I think, doing a very good job, has tried to at least get these people in the room together, because both of them are being threatened by ISIS.
Well, let me just add that, I've said this before, and I'm very proud of it, that when it comes to judgment, having run a hard race against Senator Obama at the time, he turned to me to be Secretary of State. And when it comes to the biggest counterterrorism issues that we faced in this administration, namely whether or not to go after bin Laden, I was at that table. I was exercising my judgment to advise the president what to do on that, on Iran, on Russia, on China, on a whole raft of issues. Because I know from my own experience that you've got to be ready on day one. There is just too much unpredictable threat and danger in the world today, to try to just say, wait, I'll get to that when I can. That is just not an acceptable approach.
Secretary Clinton, at the last Democratic...
So you can see at the end of that answer from Hillary Clinton, she again used President Obama as a shield. Even despite her judgment on the Iraq War, President Obama chose her as his Secretary of State. Oh, and I've been reading your live comments along the way. I saw this one comment from Nelson100 asking... wanted a little update on my tooth. My tooth is fine right now. I had this failed root canal a week ago today, and then I went and saw an oral surgeon yesterday. I will have a tooth extraction next Thursday, so I should be fine on Sunday. It will be a week from Sunday where I might be a little sore, and then maybe several months from now I might get implants, not these kind of implants, but implants in my jaw that I can then have a fake tooth put on. But that is totally immaterial to the Democratic debate from last night, except for the fact that I am fairly well able to articulate my words at the moment. I want to show one more foreign policy clip. This is where Hillary Clinton and Senator Bernie Sanders argue about Iran policy. And this, I think, is actually a continuation of the last clip. And what I think is really remarkable about this clip is there's a big switcheroo in this where Bernie Sanders says that his wanting to talk to Iran and normalize relations puts him more in line with 2008 Barack Obama, who Hillary Clinton attacked. And in this case, she does a little switcheroo and says that she was right and he can't hide behind Barack Obama like she's been hiding behind Barack Obama on those previous answers, and that's over here.
At the last Democratic debate in Charleston, I want to get specific here. Senator Sanders called for moving as aggressively as we can to normalize relations with Iran. Your campaign has criticized him for saying that. Now that he's standing next to you here on this stage, can you explain why the U.S. shouldn't try to normalize relations with Iran, in your view?
Absolutely. I did put together the coalition to impose sanctions. I actually started the negotiations that led to the nuclear agreement, sending some of my closest aides to begin the conversations with the Iranians. I'm very pleased we got that nuclear agreement. It puts a lid on the nuclear weapons program. We have to enforce it. There have to be consequences attached to it. But that is not our only problem with Iran. We have to figure out how to deal with Iran as the principal state sponsor of terrorism in the world. They are destabilizing governments in the region. They continue to support Hezbollah and Hamas in Lebanon against Israel. A lot of the work that we have to do is going to be incredibly hard. I'm prepared to do that work, but I believe, just as I did with imposing the sanctions, you have to get action for action. If we were to normalize relations right now, we would remove one of the biggest pieces of leverage we have to try to influence and change Iranian behavior. The president doesn't think we should. I certainly don't think we should. I believe we have to take this step by step to try to rein in Iranian aggression, their support for terrorism, and the other bad behavior that can come back and haunt us.
Who said that I think we should normalize relations with Iran tomorrow? I never said that. I think we should move forward as quickly as we can. And you're right. They are a sponsor of terrorism around the world, and we have to address that. But, you know, a number of years ago, people were saying normal relationship with Cuba, what a bad and silly idea. They're communists. They are our enemy. Well, guess what? Change has come. So please don't suggest that I think we normalize relations with Tehran tomorrow. We don't. But I would like to see us move forward, and hopefully someday that will happen. And I would say, if I might, Madam Secretary, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you ran against Senator Obama, you thought him naive because he thought it was a good idea to talk to our enemies. I think those are exactly the people you have to talk to and you have to negotiate with.
Well, Senator, let me just correct the record if I can. Let me correct the record. As I certainly recall, the question was to meet without conditions. And you're right, I was against that. I was against it then. I would be against it now.
Okay.
Part of diplomacy, the hard work of diplomacy, is trying to extract whatever concessions you can get in giving something the other side wants. Of course, you've got to try to make peace with and work with those who are your adversaries, but you don't just rush in, open the door and say, here I am, let's talk and make a deal.
No,
That's not the way it works.
I think President Obama had the right idea, and the bottom line is that, of course, there have to be conditions. But, of course, it doesn't do us any good to not talk with our adversaries.
We set the conditions on Iran. We worked hard to get them established and to be enforced, and then we talked.
All right,
that's exactly the right sequence. And that's what I did with the president. So he and I were on the very same page.
And just to set the record straight, I very strongly supported the agreement, which makes certain that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon.
All right, as Commander-in-Chief, Senator Sanders.
So I actually thought that Bernie Sanders did a better job on the Iran question than Hillary Clinton. And like I said, I liked the switcheroo on Bernie Sanders siding with 2008 Barack Obama on being open to talking to our adversaries and getting Clinton to attack 2008 or to reinstate her attack on 2008 Barack Obama. Because actually, you know, I've seen other commentators talk about how Bernie Sanders is running to be the heir to 2008 Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton is running to be the heir to the actual President Barack Obama. Although I actually thought President Obama ran not as much of a centrist as he turned out to be, but still pretty much of a centrist, and he is still a centrist, and that's why Hillary Clinton running to be his successor of his actual presidency means that she's more of a centrist than Bernie Sanders being the 2008 Barack Obama. But Bernie Sanders is actually well to the left of the 2008 Barack Obama himself. So I wanted to show a few more clips here, moving on to this next clip that shows that even though there was a lot of fireworks between Hillary Clinton and Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders on some of these previous issues, especially who's progressive and establishment and who's really going to take on Wall Street, when the moderators gave them chances to attack each other on more media scandals, one being the Hillary Clinton email scandal that I've talked about for many months on my Sunday clip roundup, Bernie Sanders, again, did not want to attack Hillary Clinton on that. And then the moderators brought up these kind of minor campaign worker scandals. I guess there have been a couple things that some Bernie Sanders campaign workers have done that are kind of dishonest, and there was this one that was kind of covered about looking at the data using the DNC shared voter data system, and that was covered back on the Sunday Clip Roundup a while back. And then there's this new one I hadn't heard about using like fake union pins. I don't know exactly what that's, but anyway, you'll see that after Bernie Sanders dealt with that issue, Hillary Clinton declined to attack him on that issue. So they sort of had a mutual non-aggression pact on those type of issues, apparently, over in this clip.
Famously, at the first debate, said you didn't give a darn about her emails. I think you used another quote. You're right. I'm trying to. It's a family hour still right now. After 11 o'clock, I'll say it the other way. And you mostly have commenting on it, but recently you called it a very serious issue, and then the other day you said, well, she's getting slapped with the email controversy. How are you feeling about these darn emails now?
I am feeling exactly the way I felt at the first debate. There's a process on the way. I will not politicize it.
Okay.
Senator Sanders.
Sanders, thank you.
And by the way, if I may, the Secretary probably doesn't know that there's not a day that goes by when I am not asked to attack her on that issue, and I have refrained from doing that, and I will continue to refrain from doing that.
Senator Sanders, thank you. Senator, in December, one of your campaign staffers was fired from your campaign for taking voter data, essentially, from the Clinton campaign. You apologized for that when the incident was made public. Your campaign has now been criticized for its operatives essentially impersonating culinary union members wearing union pins in Nevada. And the Nashua Telegraph has complained recently that you falsely implied in an advertisement that they had endorsed you when they did not. None of these issues, obviously, is the end of the world, but they all are of a piece. Are you, in some sense, losing control of your campaign?
Not losing control of our campaign. You know, we have hired a whole lot of people in a rapid way, and I am familiar with the first two instances, and they are unacceptable, and we have apologized and dealt with that. In terms of the last one, as I understand it, we did not suggest that we had the endorsement of a newspaper. Newspapers who make endorsements also say positive things about other candidates. And to the best of my knowledge, that is what we did. So we never said that a newspaper endorsed us that did not. What we did say is blah, 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 was said by the newspaper.
Just to follow up on that, the title of the ad in question was endorsement.
But that was only that was not to be on television. That's an important point. That was just something, as the Secretary knows, you put titles on ads and you send them out. But there was no word in that ad, none, that said that those newspapers had endorsed us.
Secretary Clinton, do you want 30 seconds on this issue?
No.
All right. And with that, we will take a break.
We'll take a break.
We'll be right back.
So I thought that was a good answer from Hillary Clinton, saying no, just like Bernie Sanders said no on the email scandal, although whether something will come of the email scandal, it still doesn't look like there's anything there to me, but I could still be surprised, and you never know where some FBI investigation may go. But as far as I understand, there hasn't even been a grand jury impaneled, so that means they're not even moving towards any sort of indictment, which is what they always talk about on Fox News. I have two more clips. The second to last one is just a policy argument between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton on the issue of the death penalty. I happen to agree with Bernie Sanders here, but this is kind of a civil debate, and I guess there are probably those of you who are in favor of the death penalty. I'm against the death penalty for like several different reasons. Just the moral reason that Bernie Sanders mentions here, that the state shouldn't be in the killing business, at least not in instances where they're not killing in self-defense, which means that there's an imminent threat of harm. And if you have someone strapped to a table or whatever, they're not imminently threatening anybody. When you kill people with the death penalty through these executions, that's not self-defense, any type of self-defense that I recognize. But, so there's the moral argument, there's the cost argument, because it actually costs more to, and that doesn't even come up in this clip, but the death penalty actually costs more than life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, which is what Bernie Sanders argues for. But first, Hillary Clinton uses the moral outrage argument about terrorism and, mass murder or whatever as saying that she's in favor of the death penalty, and I just disagree with her. And you can tell me what you think down in the comment section after you watched that debate between the two candidates for the Democratic nomination in this clip.
Secretary Clinton, on the issue of the death penalty. Here in New Hampshire, the one person who is on death row is there for killing a police officer. It's a crime that has caused anguish in this state, both among death penalty opponents and death penalty supporters. The last time I had the chance to talk with you on this issue on the death penalty, you said that capital punishment has a place in a very few federal cases, but you also said you would breathe a sigh of relief if the Supreme Court abolished the death penalty nationwide. Tonight, do you still support capital punishment, even if you do so reluctantly?
Yes, I do. And, what I hope the Supreme Court will do is make it absolutely clear that any state that continues capital punishment either must meet the highest standards of evidentiary proof of effective assistance of counsel, or they cannot continue it. Because that, to me, is the real dividing line. I have much more confidence in the federal system, and I do reserve it for particularly heinous crimes in the federal system, like terrorism. I have strong feelings about that. I thought it was appropriate after a very thorough trial that Timothy McVeigh received the death penalty for blowing up the federal building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people, including 19 children in a daycare center. So I do, for very limited, particularly heinous crimes, believe it is an appropriate punishment. But I deeply disagree with the way that too many states still are implementing it. So if it were possible to separate out the federal from the state system by the Supreme Court, that would, I think, be an appropriate outcome.
Senator Sanders, you have singled out the death penalty and Senator Clinton's support for the death penalty as an issue that makes it hard to consider her a progressive in your mind. But
look, I hear what the Secretary said, and I understand it. Look, there are... All of us know that we have seen in recent years horrible, horrible, horrible crimes. And it's hard to imagine how people can bomb and kill 168 people in Oklahoma City or do the Boston Marathon bombing. But this is what I believe, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, too many innocent people, including minorities, African Americans, have been executed when they were not guilty. That's number one. So we have to be very careful about making sure about that. But second of all, and maybe in a deeper reason, of course there are barbaric acts out there, but in a world of so much violence and killing, I just don't believe that government itself should be part of the killing. So when somebody commits any of these terrible crimes that we have seen, you lock them up and you toss away the key. They're never going to get out. But I just don't want to see government be part of killing. That's all.
Another issue related to the...
So, like I explained before I showed the clip, I happen to agree with Bernie Sanders on the death penalty, and so I think that his argument was better because he hit on one of the several arguments against the death penalty that convinces me that it's a really bad idea. And Hillary Clinton's argument there, it was one of those issues where, she's a moderate Democrat, And, she even answered a question once about, how she is a moderate Democrat. And she's trying to have it both ways, really, saying, she is in favor of the death penalty because she understands those people who are in favor of the death penalty, but she really wants to limit it and make it rare and maybe just federal or have some, if the Supreme Court did something about it, it would be fine with her, but she's really in favor, she's trying to have it both ways on the, both sides of the issue, and maybe that's just me. You can let me know what you think down in the comments section as to whether you think that Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders had the best argument in favor or opposed to the death penalty, respectively, or whether you think that Hillary Clinton was trying to have both sides of the issue, or anyway, let me know what you think. Before I end the program, though, I want to show one more clip. This is the last question that Chuck Todd asked, which was kind of a weird question. I'm not sure what it was based on. Hillary Clinton immediately denied having said what was the premise of this question from Chuck Todd, that she couldn't picture Bernie Sanders being president. And then both both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders talked very briefly about whether they would consider each other as vice president. And this is a little under 90 seconds for the last clip I'm going to show for this broadcast here.
All right, before we go, I want to ask each one of these. Secretary Clinton, you've made it clear that when you look at Senator Sanders, you do not see a president. But do you see a vice president?
Look.
Would you unite the party by trying to pick Senator Sanders as your running mate?
Well, I'm certainly going to unite the party, but I'm not getting ahead of myself. I think that would be a little bit presumptuous. If I'm so fortunate as to be the nominee, first person I will call to talk to about where we go and how we get it done will be Senator Sanders.
Would you consider the secretary?
I agree with what the secretary said. We shouldn't be getting ahead of ourselves. And as I have said many times, sometimes in these campaigns, things get a little bit out of hand. I happen to respect the secretary very much. I hope it's mutual. And on our worst days, I think it is fair to say we are 100 times better than any Republican candidate.
Go ahead, Secretary.
So that's a nice note to end on, and a note of agreement between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton that both of them on the Democratic side are 100 times better than any of those Republicans, although I think there's a Republican debate coming up on Saturday. I'm not sure. I think I'll probably just have to fold that into my Sunday clip roundup this Sunday. I don't watch the Super Bowl. Sorry if you're like a big sports fan. I'm not a big sports fan, and I will still be doing my clip roundup. The only thing that I might want to include that is coming right after the Super Bowl is the Stephen Colbert, Lixv episode of the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He's having Megyn Kelly on as one of his guests after the Super Bowl, but I'll probably end up doing my broadcast before I can include a clip of that, unfortunately. But I do plan, at least right now, on doing the Sunday clip roundup around 5 p.m. maybe, or 6 p.m., depending on how long it all takes, this Sunday. That's Pacific time, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., which is Greenwich Mean Time minus 8 hours, if that makes any difference to anybody. And I'm still working on that edited, produced video. All these stupid dental problems have kind of slowed me down, but I still hope to put out this video. All 4 Fox News women can't figure out male privilege question. Once I have like a good 8 hours where I can articulate words and I'm not busy doing something else. But if I can't get that out before Sunday, I will hopefully get it out next week before this tooth is actually extracted out of my mouth. And I guess the upside of that is that if I've been sent back here from the future by those 12 monkey scientists, they won't be able to find me anymore after they take out this back molar. So I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to seeing you all next Sunday when I do my live clip roundup. And until then, I guess I'll... Oh, and if you want to help support my videos, I always have to add this part. You can directly support my videos through YouTube fan funding by clicking on this little eye that you will find here if you hover your mouse over there. Or down in the video description, you can become one of my patrons. I'm got over 60 patrons who are pledging over $400 a month, which I really appreciate. I'm sending out my first batch of these LiberalViewer, #LiberalViewer candles from Paul Robinette Candles in the coming week to those people who've donated $30 or more for their lifetime contribution. So if you want to be a patron and you want to get in on that, or want to help me, even if my video doesn't get monetized by YouTube, as it often doesn't for various reasons, you can help me out in those various ways, and I will continue bringing you the best clips I can find of the politicians and the corporate media as the 2016 race unfolds through this year. And until next Sunday, or I put out my next video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.